Welcome to Caregivers and Community Connection. I want to thank you all for tuning in this morning. We're on the air every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. on Comcast Cable Channel 96 and on Sunday mornings at 8:30 a.m. on Comcast Cable Channel 96. Today I got a very important person. I feel like that I've been knowing for years, and she's an attorney here in our city with Chambers, Bonner, and Stoffel, and her name is Miss Dana Perry. How you doing this morning, Dana?
I'm doing great. So glad to be here.
Well, I'm glad to have you here, and I can only remember the time that we met, and I was already on the Alzheimer's board, and you became a part, so that's been 20 years ago.
It has.
And to still develop that relationship and that partnership and helping our seniors, whether they're veterans or whatever, our connection has been able to stay intact. And it's the end of the year, and it was time for me to bring you on just to talk about some of the things that we needed to talk about at the kitchen table during the Christmas holidays. Of course, Christmas was just last week, and we still got family in town, and I thought that I would bring you in and give you an opportunity to tell people something about living wills, power attorneys, and just the different things that we should be thinking about as siblings or family members. But first of all, I want you to tell the community just a little something about Dana Perry.
Okay, well, I've been practicing law now for, hard to believe, 25 years.
Wow.
And no, I did not start practicing law when I was a kid. No, siree. So I've been practicing since 1988, largely with the same law firm, but all the time in this area of estate planning and working with our seniors. And it's very, very rewarding. And so a lot of the things we're going to talk about today is based on issues that have come up, and I say, oh gosh, if only people had thought about these issues. And just like you said, people really, really need to think about these sorts of things around the kitchen table before it's too late. But I guess I did not, just to give you a little bit more information about me, I did not grow up in Chattanooga. I grew up in a little town in Mississippi, but came to Chattanooga for my first job, and have been here ever since and really love it. So,
Well, we're glad to have someone such of, of your knowledge. The first time I began to get information on power attorneys and living wills, it was information that you gave out at an Alzheimer's support group conference, and we got an opportunity to hear you speak, and I began to share it all over the city and with as many people that I could. But you brought to my attention the things that we needed to discuss as a family, as a unit, and what other time is when everybody comes home. And we're home this week. We just celebrated Christmas, and I thought it was time to talk about it.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll start with something that, it's really surprising how few families share this information, much less put it down on paper. But it's how you want your health decisions handled if you cannot speak for yourself. And people, the fairy tale, I think, unfortunately, people think they're going to, eventually have bad health. Of course, a lot of people never think about that.
Right.
But if they do, they think, well, it's going to kind of be like on some TV episode where, it's that person who looks healthy lying in the bed, and they're completely cognizant of their surroundings and able to let people know, and then boom, they pass away. And as you and I know, that's just not the way it is. For most people, there's a period where they can't communicate their wishes, and the family is left trying to decipher, sometimes from very little information, what the person would have wanted for their health care for the remainder of their life. And, it's just amazing to me the benefit if around the kitchen table over a holiday time like this, you got the children gathered around, and you say in front of them, hey, this is what I want or do not want in terms of keeping me alive. Many people are surprised. I know I had a good friend who had some health problems. This was several years ago. And he said he did not want to be resuscitated no matter what. I said, and he was perfectly, in his right mind. He had had a lot of health problems, though. He said, I have been under the knife so many times. I'm in my 70s, and if I have cardiac arrest or something, that's it. I want what's called a DNR order. And I was like, all right, coming right up. But see, that's something that his family really needed to know. And so we got that in place.
One of the things I can say, owning an assisted living facility, is state mandatory that we have to have a DNR on the chart, whether to tell your wishes.
Right.
So that's done. But in our homes, we don't find that that's taken care of. When they asked about, do you have a power attorney for health care? Back in the late 90s, I think I was a nurse at Park Ridge, and that was one of the number one questions we would ask people when they were admitted into the hospital. Do you have a power attorney for health care? And mostly 90% of the people did not even really understand. And a lot of times I see family keep people on, a ventilator because of the simple fact they can't give up.
Yes.
It's not because the person wants to stay in a vegetarian state, but they really want to go on. But it's hard to let go of a parent or a loved one. So that's the reason why you're suggesting that we need to talk about it, why everybody is in their right mind and can make those decisions.
Well, and it, I think sometimes when the family keeps the parent or the other loved one going when there really isn't hope left, it's because they're not really sure what their loved one would have wanted, and they can rely, if they've got that written documentation, from the person saying, no, I do not want to stay alive if I'm in this setting, then it's a comfort. It's not as if you're having to play God, you're just respecting what the person wanted. And I want to work in here, this is not widely known, but you can get the form to make these choices either as a Tennessee or a Georgia resident free. The Tennessee Department of Health website, all you have to do is get on the computer and Google Advanced Care Plan Tennessee, and it'll pop right up. It's the Tennessee Department of Health. It's a pre-done form. You just click right on it and print it up. You can say who you want as your health care power of attorney to make your decisions. And you get to check boxes about what you would or would not want. And there's even a place for you to put what your funeral wishes are. And I mean, it's just this very simple worded 2-page form. And I tell you, anytime I'm in any type of, anytime I'm speaking or doing interview like this, or I always try to work in about that advanced care plan, because it's free and it's just there for Tennessee citizens, and it was developed because of just that statistic you cite, that they found in the health establishment that so few Tennesseans had any type of advance written directive about what they wanted for their end-of-life care. Let's get the word out.
Oh, we will. Between yourself and me, and being able to tell people, who will let them know, because I did not even realize, even with a will, if it's handwritten, in your handwriting, it's good in the state of Tennessee.
That's absolutely correct, and I guess that leads to another thing, that so often people fail to write down instructions like that, and even if they don't have much in the way of material resources, even if they just write down what their wishes are as to the disposition of their remaining belongings, or what they want for their funeral, that will go so far in helping the family cope with it and keep peace in the family. I definitely think that that's kind of one of those hidden things too. A lot of times people say, well, I don't have anything. Why do I need to bother with this?
I hear that a lot.
And I'd say, well, for one thing, even if you don't have much, take some time and write out what you do or do not want for your funeral and think that through, because you know, the family should not be in a position of having to come up with that on their own. There have got to be, you know, certain hymns, certain prayers, maybe a certain type of visitation, whether you want it or not. And I know for, you know, a fair number of people, unfortunately, you know, they make the decision that they do not want either a service proper or any type of you know, commemoration at their death. I had an aunt who was in that position, and it was tough, but we knew that was her wish, and she had put that down in writing.
Even to be cremated.
Yeah.
I would see that would be a problem with some siblings over another. So
Yeah.
it's important for you to even write that down. Do it have to be notarized, the will, if we write it in our own print?
Well, if every word of the will is in your own handwriting, it does not need to be notarized. And again, I'm not suggesting that everybody can get by on that, but you know, it's better than nothing.
Right.
And if what you're talking about is, you know, a few belongings maybe, and your wishes for what happens as to your funeral when you pass, you know, put it in handwriting. And then, you know, and a lot of times if you call up a lawyer and just say, I've written this out, would you take a look at it? They'll do that and won't charge you an entire, you know, consultation. They'll just take a look at it for you.
Well, I like that. But we're going to talk a little bit more in the definition of wills when we come back. We're going to take a small break, and we'll be right back with Caregivers and Community Connection.
This is Mocha. Better ask somebody.
Welcome back to Caregivers and Community Connection. For those of you all who are just tuning in, we got Miss Dana Perry here in the studio with me this morning, and we're just talking about living wills, power attorneys, and the things that we should be sitting around talking about after the Christmas holidays. That is very concerning to people in general, not necessarily the elderly, but just anybody should really look at this. And we were talking about power attorneys. And me, I've been in the business for 16 and a half years. I ran across a whole lot of confusion at the time of death. On the financial end, people pop back up just like in lottery. You know, if you win or if you die, everybody shows up to see what they're going to get. What do you suggest that we do on the financial end? We talked about the health end, but what about the financial end of it?
Well, it's similar advice that people are doing their families and loved ones no good if they just say, well, I'm not going to burden with them, that they'll figure this out when I die, or I don't have enough to fool with, nobody's going to care, because they will. And frankly, there's this inverse proportionality that really bothers me, and it works like this, that, you know, in my practice, I represent people at a lot of different levels of wealth and planning. And, you know, by and large, those with a lot of money have gotten the word that they've got to plan out. Not always. And so generally, the larger the estate, the more likely it is that they understand and have pre-planned and done the things they need to do. It's when you get down into the more modest estates, you tend to have more fights. And
Oh,
I
definitely.
think people just think, oh, I'm not going to have anything. I don't want to be a burden. It's going to, I'm just not going to fool with it. And really, the issue is, that's even less money around to take care of that person when they're getting down and not able to look after themselves, or when they pass, and people are fighting over it. Because you're right, unfortunately, it's just human nature. People will come out of the woodwork.
Right.
So what do you need to do? Well, first off, this thing called a power of attorney over finances is absolutely critical almost for every single individual. And it is different from a healthcare power of attorney or advanced care plan. It's a separate document. And it basically is a document you execute when you are competent, when you are in your right mind to say, here is this person that I'm designating to make decisions for me as to my financial assets, my bank accounts and whatnot. And basically, that can be used even if you're not incapacitated. You might be out of town or can't be two places at once, and
Right.
you need somebody to help with an asset. However, it's most likely used when people aren't able to make their own decisions. And unfortunately, if you do not have a power of attorney and no pre-planning, and you get to where you can't take care of your own assets, a lot of times it's because you're suffering from dementia, Alzheimer's, and nobody is designated, then the solution that the law puts forth is you have to go to court. Your loved ones have to go to court, and it's a very expensive proposition.
Right.
And many times there's conflicting issues over who is to be appointed to take on administration of somebody's property, and just wasted money. Just
Right.
hate to see that. And that is money, comes out of the person's money, and that's money that's needed to take care of them. And so a power of attorney can cut through all that clutter and say, hey, here's who I want. And sometimes people will not deal with it because they have difficult choices to make.
Right.
And I say, you've got to sit down and make those difficult choices. And getting back to what we were talking about before the break, sitting around the kitchen table, once you've made your decision and have your paperwork and who you're going to appoint, I think it's very beneficial to just sit them all down and say, hey, here's who I'm going to appoint. I'm going to appoint Sally over this and Bobby over this, and this is what I want. Now
I like that. Because it does take a lot from a family to get in the middle of disputes.
Mm-hmm.
In at a difficult time
Yeah.
anyway,
Uh-huh.
and you're trying to grieve, and then you're trying to deal with what you got to deal with if it hadn't been taken care of before.
Yeah.
Now, but it's so many families that fall out
Mm-hmm.
over a table, a picture, a lamp. People say they don't have very much, but they got that lamp, they got that picture, they got something that she thought mama said she could have, but she didn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
They're still living, and they're still brothers and sisters or whatever kin, but they don't speak anymore for those little things. So that was one of the things you wanted me to bring out in a living trust. Tell us the definition or the difference in a will, a living will, and a living trust.
Well, a living trust is most like a will, and a living trust is a document where you can go in while you're living, and if you put your property into it before you pass, it will control the disposition of your estate when you're gone without going to court. And again, that theme, if you can do it ahead of time and not have to go to court. And you can have your instructions for your personal belongings in there too. There's 2 or 3 different ways to do it, but I really, really like people taking the bull by the horns and being very specific, because a lot of times people do know that more than one of their kids wants that certain vase or that certain lamp or the jewelry or whatnot. And you're absolutely right, Sharon. If people do not deal with this, it definitely will break up a family.
Yes.
People will, and it's because that item has, it's not monetary value, it's sentimental value. And, once that, a lot of times that parent is they pour, what is it, oil on the troubled waters,
They can keep it calm.
They can keep it calm, but once the parent is gone or going downhill, the top blows off,
Right.
and all of those underlying resentments pop out. And so, do you really want all of that stuff to pop out at the most stressful time when you are down in ill health or have just passed away? And so, a living trust, rather, you settle what's going to happen. Management of your affairs, both when you're incapacitated and then who gets what when you die. The key thing with a living trust, though, is you have to put your property in the trust, which involves not only signing the trust document, but like if you have bank accounts, let's say a CD someplace,
right.
or you own a home, those are two assets most people have, or many people have. You have to have a deed to your home, and you have to go to the bank and sign a form to place the property within your living trust. So you've got to have the document, plus you have to go get those other forms done. You have to do both to make sure it works right.
I think one of the things that people see is that it costs a little bit more for a living trust over a living will. And because we're saving $500 at that point, we have a tendency not to follow through
Right.
with the living trust. And but in the end, when you have to go to probate court and all that stuff, it's going to cost more and more time.
Right.
So I would think that it would be good to get a living trust over a living will, because at the time of death, everything that was trusted to you becomes yours, from my understanding. Yeah. Am I correct?
Well, that's right. And, and it's kind of a false economy. And, you just don't know no one knows how many days they have left on this earth. And
No.
every day is a blessing that you have to be here on this earth. And so, you've got to have your plans in order. And, and it's really, I think, a false economy to push the expense off and say you'll deal with it later, because once a person really starts to have problems with their physical health, where they just don't feel up to dealing with potentially a difficult situation, or mentally they start to have issues, then it becomes harder and harder to make these decisions. So you really need to tackle them. People need to be tackling all these type of decisions much, much earlier in their life. Like, they're likely to think about it when they're in their, let's say, 70s and whatnot, where they really need to be thinking about it when they're, certainly either if they've got kids at home, or when they're in their 50s and 60s, they need to be doing this type of thing and then updating it from there. And they're setting a precedent. And it will save money. It will.
I
save
like
money.
that, and it will be, because if you got memory loss or dementia, and then you try to do it, another sibling or some other family member can say that that person was incompetent to give
right.
the correct information.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to thank you for coming out this morning and helping us to make those tough decisions. But tell the community how they can get in touch with you.
Well, they can get in touch with me a couple of ways. My law firm is the Chambliss Law Firm, and again, my name's Dana Perry. So you can go to my website, which is chamblisslaw.com, and just look me up there, and it's got information on my phone number and my email address, and the sorts of things I do. And also, I want to mention I have a newsletter that comes out once a month, so you can get on that website and subscribe to my newsletter.
I love that newsletter because it keeps me informed and what's still going on in Chambliss, Bonner, and Stoffel. But I want to thank you again for coming out this morning. Really enjoyed you and enjoyed our years of friendship and what we do for the community and for our seniors. Thank you so much, Dana.
Thank you.